Hello, everybody. My name is Ratnus, and today we have the second talent tree preview to go over. The Druid one is going to be uploaded. By the time you see this video, the Druid one will have been out for a couple hours probably, so feel free to go watch that one. There's also some stuff about the philosophy of the talent trees that they talked about there that I'm not going to rehash. But let's talk about Death Knights a little bit. So my personal experience with Death Knight, I haven't really played Unholy since BFA, where I played it for some M+ tournaments and stuff. Frost, mess around with a little bit right now, but also haven't really played too much in a while. Blood, I did progression last 5 bosses of this tier as a Blood Decay, and also played it back in like Nihilotha, so have a little bit more intimate experience with that. But I would say Death Knight is one of the specs or one of the classes I know fairly well. So right from the top, the baseline Decay abilities. It's worth noting there is not a raid buff here like there was for Druids with Mark of the Wild, so potentially we're seeing some classes are being added to the raid buff team, and DK is not among them, but there is some very powerful utility in the DK tree, such as Anti-Magic Zone, such as Abomination Limb, such as just Grip, that are the kinds of effects, and I think Gorfiends as well we've got hanging out down here as well. So these are potent effects, but they don't... it's a little bit different power, but it's definitely something that might be something that gets you extra spots. Okay, that doesn't look like Gorfiends at all, actually. Okay, so maybe that's still just a Blood Decay specific thing. Right, so let's go through and talk a little bit about the stuff. Again, if you're not familiar with how these trees work, you're going to get 31 points in the left tree, which is just for your class, and that's shared between all 3 specs, but your starting point is depending on which spec you're on. So if you're Frost, you're going to start off over here on the left with Chains of Ice. If you're Blood, you're going to start off on Deathstrike, and if you're Unholy, you're going to start off on Raise Dead, and you could get any of them as anything else, but I think you have to path over there if you want to. And then every spec has its own spec tree as well, which we'll go over later, but let's start off with the class tree. So again, yeah, if you want to get Deathstrike, you're going to have to path over if you're not Blood and pick it up there, but you get Anti-Magic Shell as well. I suspect that every Death Knight is going to be interested in Anti-Magic Shell and Deathstrike unless they are going for a purely Glass Cannon build, and that's kind of my read of this tree, is that most of the power, this may just be tank brain corrupting things, but there's a lot of defensive power in this tree if you're interested. However, Mind Freeze and Interrupt is also over here, but you need to go and path over here if you want to go grab it, or if you want the thing where your Death and Decay makes your abilities cleave, you also need to grab it. So all of the stuff in the top, like the top of the tree here, this is all very baseline Shadowlands DK stuff that you may be interested in grabbing all of it, but you might want to save your points and get down here and see if you can, can I get by without an Interrupt and a Chains of Ice, and without Raise Dead and a Death and Decay if I'm a Blood Decay? On some fights, the answer is yes. On some fights, the answer is absolutely not. You need the Interrupt. In order to path over, you're going to have to grab Blood Scent or Suppression, which are these little plus nodes. These are Leech or Avoidance, respectively. I'm kind of just interested in clicking these buttons anyways. These are, 3% Leech, 3% Avoidance for a talent point, I suspect is going to be something I'm always interested in. There's also Veteran of the Third War here for stamina increase. Also something that, again, very powerful, even if you're Unholy or Frost and it's less strong per point, that's still a lot. And Brittle, your diseases have a chance to weaken your enemy, causing your attacks against them to deal 6% increased damage for 5 seconds, is also here, as is IBF. So far, I've read a bunch of abilities that I want all of going into this tree. And we get into row 4, we have a little bit more conditionalness. We've got Permafrost, auto attacks granting you an Absorb Shield. Actually, potentially pretty potent for Blood. That's currently only a Frost passive. Blinding Sleet, again, very situational PvP, M+ type thing. Given the strength of the defensive options on this tree, I suspect that pathing over for Blinding Sleet, unless you're already grabbing... I guess you're probably grabbing IBF if you're a tank. So maybe it's one free point, but I feel like this is going to be the kind of thing where you're like, can I drop this entire left side of the tree and get more of this defensive nonsense that's here in the rest of the place? We've also got Death Pact, heal you for 50% of your max HP, but then put a 30% healing absorb on yourself. Again, that's something we've seen in PvP already. Wraithwalk, Sacrificial Pact, and gain 5% haste while you remain within your Death and Decay, which is also pretty potent, but that's far right, so that's going to be something that you'll have to path all the way over to Unholy for if you're like Blood or Frost and you want this. Row 5, we've got Crit Chance and Strength as passives here. very powerful, but note the way that this tree operates. If you want to get crit chance and strength, you're going to have to do a lot of horizontal pathing, right? Because there's not a direct link here in the middle, right? You'd have to either cross over in the top or the bottom of the tree and then path up or down. Ooh, that's my other video rendered. Sorry about that. Then we've got Proliferating Chill, which is an extra... Oh, and then, of course, there's Anti-Magic Zone in the middle here, so, AMZ. Proliferating Chill, extra Chains of Ice target. Thankfully, a point that we don't have to spend. I guess PvP. Runic Empowerment. Every runic power you spend has a chance to instantly grant you a rune, or Runic Corruption. Right now, these are like the Frost and Unholy versions of this effect, and you'll be able to choose them both against each other here. If you're on the basically the Frost side of the tree. Mind Freeze, Interrupt Runic Power, and CDR. Potentially interesting for, I guess, M+. Also potentially just not worth the point. Asphyxiate, you have to be in the middle path to get that. Death's Advance, also have to be in the middle path. Anti-Magic Shell buff. Now, Anti-Magic Barrier, so this talent has basically never been picked because it's against Will of the Necropolis right now. But now that it's actually just an option, not exclusive with that, I think this will probably be a pretty strong option for tanks on fights like Jailer or Rygalon that have a lot of stuff that AMS is good against. Control Undead, available here on the Unholy side. Death's Reach, which is, again, that looks like a PvP thing, or Grip of the Dead, which is a very powerful effect, but especially for blood decays right now, but now you'd have to path over to the right to go grab it. And Enfeeble. Your ghouls' attacks have a chance to reduce the target's movement speed by 30% and the damage they deal to you by 15% for 6 seconds. Depending on proc rate here, this might be the kind of thing that's actually sleeper potent for tanks also, so we'll see. I suspect otherwise PvP thing, though. Okay, then we get down to row 7. Row 7 is just above the cutoff here, right? Yeah, then 8, 9, 10. Okay, just above the cutoff for spending. So you have to spend 20 total points to get down to row 8. In row 7, we've got IBF cooldown reduction, Anti-Magic Zone buff, and Lichborn for Leech, the current Lichborn effect. So none of these are that sick, but AMS, these are potentially strong, but I don't know. IBF's not that exciting of a cooldown. AMZ, 10% increase. The Runic Power will be nice. This will be good for Breath of Sindragosa Frost, I'm sure. Okay, row 8. Now we're getting to the good stuff. So again, you only have 11 total points if you spend just the minimum in the top, the 20 at the top. You only have 11 points to divide among row 8, 9, and 10. But in row 8, we've got some stuff that's just pretty clear, potent throughput. Horn of Winter, improved Death Strike, which... I can't see how you'd pass this up if you're a DK tank unless you're really just going full damage on farm. Will of the Necropolis, available for DPS DKs now. This thing is a huge survivability increase on progression encounters. And then increases effect of Runeforge effects, which some of the Runeforges are really strong, but that's pretty far over to the right-hand side here. You're probably not going to be able to path over if you're wanting this stuff over on the left. Runic Attenuation. Autos have a chance to grant Runic Power. Rune Mastery, Strength Proc, Blood Draw, that's right here below Will of the Necropolis. When you fall below 30% health, you drain health from nearby enemies, can only occur every 3 minutes, excuse me? This thing also seems really good for tanks, but also for DP. I imagine just the possibilities here for constructing an Unholy Death Knight that cannot die on progression are very strong. If you just take, a bunch of this right-hand side stuff and then AMS Death Strike, AMZ, Avoidance Leech, Veteran of the Third War, Will of the Necropolis, Blood Draw. What raid boss is ever going to kill you if you're taking those options? I don't know. And then finally at the very bottom, we've got Empower Rune Weapon, which is haste, runes, and RP. It's a Frost effect. Frost also has it on their row 7 that they can get Empower Rune Weapon. If you pick both on the DK tree and the Frost tree, you'll just get 2 charges of it. Otherwise, if you're a Blood or Unholy DK, you can get 1 charge of it from just the left-hand side of the tree. We got A-Bomb Limb making a return. It's down at the bottom of the Blood tree. Again, a very potent effect. Very strong, but it requires substantial investment, right? You're going to have to spend 3 points in improved Death Strike, which, if you're not a Blood DK, is a pretty big cost. So they're kind of moving this to something that Blood DKs will get for free, and Unholy or Frost will have to invest to get. And then we got Soul Reaper over on the Unholy side. So yeah, you can get this if you're not a Unholy DK. Potentially some kind of full damage Frost build could maybe look like a big M, right, or a big N, where it's just all the left-hand side stuff, all the right-hand side stuff. Who needs this survivability garbage in the middle? Okay, now we've got some Blood Decay stuff. So Blood, you're starting off picking up Heart Strike, Marrow Rend, Blood Boil, again, stuff that currently exists in the game. Pretty quick, though, we're starting to get some pretty potent, just flat percent increases for stuff. Rune Tap, available as a choice here, but you don't need to take it if you don't want, if you want to save the talents, which some people are either never press Rune Tap or press it very badly, in which case you'll be better off not pressing that. Blood Tap, you can also choose to ignore and just go for passives, and that might even be a reasonable play, although Blood Tap's pretty powerful. But Rune Tap is really strong, but it's also something that if you can get away without needing it, you could do more damage if you put points everywhere else. Increases armor gain from Bone Shield. Heart Strike heals you for each enemy for 0.5%, I assume, of your health for each enemy hit while affected by Blood Plague. So potentially healing you for 2% of your health per go, because they nerfed the D&D thing. You only get 3 extra targets now if you're a Blood Decay. So I guess Heart Strike hits 2 by default. So you could hit 5 targets and get 2.5% of your health every time you hit Heart Strike. That'd be really strong with the current 4 set, but presumably that's not going to survive. Crimson Scourge, so yeah, there's Death's Caress, which is a talent, and maybe something that you can save a talent point on. Oh, it's generating Bone Shield charges now, and it's on a 6-second cooldown. Interesting. So a bit of a different take on Death's Caress, a little bit more of like a use this to start a pull, don't use it to tag like 30 enemies all at once. We got Blood Drinker versus Consumption. Neither of these talents are in vogue right now, but potentially I could see that both of them have been good at different points in the past. Mark of Blood against Tombstone. Tombstone's good right now, but that's only because of the 4 set and the legendary that we're using. Otherwise, this would be something that neither of these have been particularly good for a while. Voracious, currently, both Voracious and Bloodborne both have been good at different times as well. So a lot of potentially good options here, and then we start moving into row 7. Ossuary, Improved Vamp Blood, Hemostasis, Heartbreaker. All of these are strong effects. All of these are effects that people use basically right now. Then we get to row 8. So again, row 8, 10 total points to spend in 8, 9, 10. So very tough choices. Gorfiends is here. Rune Weapon is here. And Rapid Decomposition you don't have to pick unless you want something below it, because you could take Rune Weapon and Gorfiends. So let's see what other stuff is below. What's over on the far left that would require you to take Rapid Decomposition and be over on that side? When Bone Shield is consumed, it shatters, dealing damage, tripled to enemies affected by D&D. Ooh, that's probably a lot of damage. If that's a lot of damage, that's pretty exciting. And Bone Storm is below that as well. Okay, so we got to go here for AoE Dam. I see. But otherwise, yeah, just again, some pretty strong effects. Red Thirst, talent that I like a lot right now. Crimson Rune Weapon, that's the legendary that we're using right now. Heart Strike, potentially... Or Heart Rend. Okay, so yeah, that's this thing here, which you need if you want to get the extra rune weapon. And each rune spent increases its duration by 0.5 seconds. That's the 2-piece. That's the very, very strong 2-piece that Blood Decay has right now. All right. Okay. Well, Blood Decay maybe is back on the menu for all of next expansion, as you can also pick Purg, and you can pick Unquenchable Thirst. When Vamp Blood is active, store a portion of your Death Strike healing. When it expires, splatter nearby enemies, dealing 100% of the stored healing as shadow damage. Oh, dude, could you imagine doing this against, like, Jailer when you've got that dot in P2? You just Vamp Blood and you heal yourself for 500k over the course of that dot and just blast him. Oh my goodness. This is crazy. I mean, I only have 10 points to spend at the bottom of the tree here, and I want all of them. This is so cool. My initial read of this is that a lot of the stuff that Blood Decay has that is really strong right now is in here as well. So it's going to be a good time. Maybe I can play Blood Decay all of next expansion. Maybe I don't have to swap to some other tank. Let's take a quick look at Frost. So Frost, we're starting off with, again, effects that are currently baseline, right? Everything in rows 1, 2, 3 currently baseline. And then we start getting these kind of simple passive damage increases on different effects. And then we start getting to the choice nodes here in row 6 for Frost. You've got Obliterate, 10% chance to refund 2 runes versus Obliterate, 15% increased chance to trigger Rhyme, and Rhyme giving you RP. We've got Inexorable Assault versus Cold Heart. I think that's already... Is this already a choice that's against each other? I know these are both on the talent tree right now. And then Avalanche, which is going to be slightly different than the like avalanche procs from 4-set. It's the Rhyme Howling Blast are going to cause it. Okay. And Frozen Pulse. Yeah, I remember this was something that was good. I don't think it's good right now, or maybe it's not currently in the game. Okay, Remorseless Winter damage increase. This is a legendary right now. Biting Cold, that's currently an M+ legendary. And Chill Streak, very powerful 2-target effect that you could murder people with in PvP. I wonder how that'll work out. I remember you could do it in M+ as well when Conflict and Strife let you talent this at the end of BFA. Okay, row 7. Are starting to get some stuff. Wielding a 2-handed weapon increases obliterate damage by 30% and causes your auto attack crits to grant Killing Machine. So auto attack crits will not grant Killing Machine, I guess, by default. But if you're 2-handed Frost and you take Might of the Frozen Waste, you will. Is there anything for dual wield anywhere here, or is this just for 2-hand? Interesting. I don't see anything for them just yet. There's that next Charge of Empower Rune Weapon if you want it. And, ooh, some Chill Streak. Some ways to enhance Chill Streak. Chill Streak's bounce range is increased by 2 yards, and each time it bounces, it has a 20% chance to increase the maximum number of bounces by 1. So theoretically, if you high rolled, you could just Chill Streak and it could bounce like 20 times. That would own. Okay, there's the 4-piece that we have right now. Ooh, that means you won't have to Rune Forge Razor Ice if you don't want to. Okay. Interesting. Frost Scythe. Old classic. Crit, very good as well. Very interesting. And then we got Frostworm. So on row 9, we've got Cold-Blooded Rage. Frost Strike crits have a chance to grant Killing Machine. Frostworm's Fury versus Invigorating Freeze. Now, Frostworm Fury, obviously that big dragon. Frost Fever crits increase the chance to grant runic power by an additional 5 or 10%. So it looks like this is not something you'd be interested at all in if you were Breath of Syndragosa, right? Right on the right-hand side. So it's like you have a Breath of Syndragosa build over here, and you kind of have a 2-handed Obliteration style build over here. Because then, yeah, you could take Obliteration or Ice Cap over on the far left and choose to not be choose to be casting Frost Strikes instead of, Breath as when you're doing damage, versus Breath of Syndragosa, yeah, obviously being on the right-hand side. I suspect this Frost is usually best when Breath of Syndragosa is the best build, in my opinion. That build has been the most fun I've had playing this, but I do hope that Ice Cap or Obliteration will be more competitive than they are now. All right, and then finally we have Unholy. Again, same story here at the start of the tree. Default baseline effects. And then we start moving down. Epidemic, these sorts of things that... This is a talent point you don't have to spend on single target raid encounters, but you do have to spend on AoE, on M+, that kind of stuff. Dark Transformation, a point that I'm sure is basically mandatory, unless the spec is very different than I last played it. We've got Unholy Pact, that Azurite trait, the Flaming Chains thing, versus Defile. We've got Bursting Sores versus Ebon Fever. So again, existing or previous talent choices just up against each other. Row 7, Army is available here. Hard to imagine. Oh, and a big Execute buff as well. 20% additional damage for a bunch of abilities below 35% health. Row 8, we start to... So again, row 8 is where we only have 20 or 10 total points to spend. Death Rot, Sudden Doom causes your Death Coil to burst up to 2 additional festering wounds and increase the shadow damage the target takes from you by 4% per wound popped for 6 seconds. Apocalypse, obviously the very potent effect that used to be that Azurite, or the artifact weapon ability, but has just been baseline for a while now. Unholy Blight, surround yourself with a vile swarm of insects, stinging enemies, inflicting them with the plague, and an unholy disease that deals damage over 14 seconds and stacks up to 4 times. So kind of an AoE option, probably a little bit less of the... I suspect the raid build is going to be these ones, and going to be on the left-hand side here, at least on row 8. Let's see what we got on row 9. Festermite. Now, Festermite was big... Festermite was the big quadratic scaling effect that Unholy had in BFA, but it's over on the far left this time. Interesting. Whereas the Unholy Blight effect was over on the far right, which was the other thing that looked kind of AoE. So, might be hard to path and get both of those. Dark Transformation increases attack speed. Okay, so just a passive, that probably is going to be good. Disease enemies take increased damage per disease they're affected by. Okay. Now, does this mean damage from you? Or does this mean increased damage for the raid? Because if enemies are taking 6% increased damage per disease they're affected by, and you could affect them with like 3 diseases or something, 2 diseases. Goodness gracious, Unholy will be the best spec in Raid by far. Especially, I assume this just means from you. But if it doesn't, then Unholy will be broken beyond belief until they change it so that it does work that way. Unholy Aura, all enemies within 8 yards take increased damage from your minions. Yeah. And then we've got, okay, Unholy Assault. Infect the target with 4 festering wounds, sending you into Unholy Frenzy. So it's just Unholy Frenzy plus upfront stuff. I love that. Death Coil reduces the cooldown of Apocalypse and Army. And you also get Magus of the Dead versus Gargoyle. Whew. Yeah, I mean, this is so cool. I feel like, especially with Unholy and Frost, there's a lot of different builds. With Blood, a lot of power here. A lot of ways to customize for offense, sustained defense, passive defense, and like really potent buttons you can press as well if you want them to. So, I mean, 30 points is not a lot. There's a huge amount of stuff that I want in these trees, and that I think is exactly how that should be. So, yeah, I mean, initial read, Decay looking kind of OP. Hopefully that's what I feel like after reading every talent tree, but I'm going to have a lot of fun. Oh my goodness, I want to play Blood Decay next expansion. This is so exciting. Let me know what you think. Hope you enjoyed this little video. Again, links in the description to all the effects and stuff. I obviously skimmed a lot here, so a lot of effects I missed. What's the most exciting thing I missed? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.